slash dot dash dot slash dot dash dot.
Welcome to Slash Dot Dash Dot. My name's Jack, and today we're talking about Dragonball Z Fighter Z. I was such a big fan of the series growing up. I remember running home from school, eating my tea as fast as possible, and heading round to my best friend's house to see the latest episode. Unfortunately, I never got to see the complete saga, so many characters such as Majin Buu, Whis, and Beerus totally passed me by. But those epic fights between Goku and Vegeta, and his fight with Frieza, and his fight with Cell remain imprinted in my memory. So imagine my excitement when a 2.5D fighting game was announced for Dragon Ball Z. It immediately brought up memories of Marvel vs Capcom with multiple fighters tagging in and out during the fight. So I'm going to discuss my thoughts after playing the game for over 2 weeks now, so let's get into it. Firstly, I want to talk about the story. I wasn't sure how they were going to present the story, if it would follow what we've seen in the TV series in the past, or if it would be a totally new story. What they went with was an interesting approach, to say the least. Us, the player, are portrayed as having to co-inhabit our favourite Z fighters' bodies. Without us, they aren't strong enough to fight due to some sort of sonic wave. The sonic wave's been emitted by the bad guys, and it's preventing everyone else from using their full power, basically. It's a rather convoluted plot, but it makes sense in terms of the gameplay. Every time we switch a fighter mid-fight, we are transferring our being into that fighter. The world map is like a board game, with us having a finite amount of moves to use per stage. This has been used in previous Dragon Ball Z games, and I have to say it feels quite cheap and lazy. I do like how you can change characters between fights with their stamina carrying over. This brings an element of team management to make sure you're not going to fights with a fighter already at half health. It also provides different cutscenes before fights, sometimes with hilarious outcomes depending on the characters you've selected. So for instance, if you go into a fight with Krillin and Goku, you get the kind of standard Dragon Ball Z cutscene. If you go into a fight with Goku and Vegeta, you get a little bit of the Saiyan banter between those guys, and sometimes you have the opportunity to go into a fight with one of the enemy characters, and that provides some funny cutscenes. There's an especially funny one with the Ginyu Force, bringing back some old memories from the series. I'll be honest though and say that I straight up didn't really like the story. I would have preferred a story more akin to the latest Mortal Kombat games, one where we get cinematic cutscenes, but obviously we would have had it in this Dragon Ball Z style, but moving through different fighters on each stage and showing their side of one linear story. The presentation of Dragon Ball Z Fighter Z is absolutely begging for this approach, with the slick animation segments here being hampered by the strange enforced plot point. For some reason, when you start the superhero arc, there's a mix of standard tutorial and boss battles. I have no idea why there are so many tutorial fights, and some are repeated in this early stage. At first I thought it was a good idea, but for some reason they're on every stage. This doesn't happen later on though, or in the later arcs of the story. You do have a choice between US and Japanese voice acting, but bear in mind that the preset is Japanese. This falls under the slightly confusing menu that I found with this game. It wasn't always super obvious where things were to change and how to action certain things. I played a lot of the game in Japanese to start with. I have to say that the first arc, the superhero arc, was really easy, and the end level boss had a rating of level 31. My 3 fighters were all around 18. And the enemy did very minimal damage to my characters. In fact, I'm sure I never lost any of my fights across all 3 arcs. The second arc sees you take control of enemy characters. I think it's supposed to be like a parallel universe to the superhero arc. You do eventually team up with the good guys though, and some parts seem like they overlap with the superhero arc. It was all a little bit confusing really, the way that this game was presented, I found. This arc took me a little bit longer. I tried to get the XP boosted on all my characters because it was getting a little bit more difficult with the fights towards the end. The third arc is the Android arc. This one's a lot more difficult because you can only use 2 characters for most of it, meaning that your stamina doesn't have a chance to recover between fights as much over the course of the story. Later on you unlock all the other characters though. So all in all, the story took me around 13 hours to complete, which is a decent amount of time considering the money it costs for the game. The game is very much geared towards being a competitive multiplayer though, and this is sort of the meat of it. To even get into the story mode, you actually have to load into a lobby, which is a bit of an odd choice because if PlayStation Network or Xbox Live weren't down for any reason, we wouldn't be able to play the game. There should have been separate menus for the solo game and the multiplayer game. Once you're in the lobby, you have the option of ranked matches, ring matches, arena matches, story mode, and arcade mode. You can also check your standings, and there is a tutorial as well. Now I highly recommend you do the tutorial, but if you play the story mode first, you will get this anyway. Unlike other fighting games, you don't have a long list of moves to learn. Every fighter uses the same commands. The skill in the game is learning the timing and the phases of combos to chain together as many attacks as possible. I can't tell you how many times I've been backed into a corner and just pummeled by my opponents. The lack of different moves to learn makes the game easier to jump in and get to grips with, but it holds back any feelings of progression and feeling of achievement. We all know how sweet it feels to finally master a complicated moveset in any fighting game, and here we don't have that chance. Matchmaking is pretty straightforward once you know what to do. You have to approach an on-screen vendor to get things going. It was a little confusing at first. You could just walk around the lobby whilst matchmaking was happening. I didn't notice the symbol pop up in the bottom corner saying match found for the first few goes. I was getting really annoyed as to why I couldn't get a game. Then I realised I was missing the match found symbol. Most matches seem fine. I have had a few laggy ones, but on the whole the experience has been fine, apart from during peak hours. It seems during peak time I was constantly getting kicked out of lobbies or mid-match. It was getting really frustrating as I couldn't get a good run of games going. And actually, those comments there were from when I started playing the game 2 weeks ago. At the moment it seems like I can't get any games. I just constantly get kicked out. It's a real shame because you just want to go on and kick back and do some multiplayer. Now, I won't lie, I suck at fighting games. I've got a pretty poor record in the game. And it's a little disheartening, but you do want to get better and you do want to sort of keep going to make yourself a better player. The graphical style of the game reminds you of the TV show. Often during cutscenes I would kick back with a massive smile on my face at the presentation of the game. Even the fights just look like the show. It's truly wonderful to look at. So overall, Dragon Ball Z Fighter Z is the purest fighting game to ever come out in the series. I've played a lot of the previous entries and really not enjoyed them. The base level gameplay is easy enough for most to just jump in and have a go with the multiplayer, but the ranked matches are a huge step up if you're not experienced. Be prepared to lose many games. So my final rating for Dragon Ball Z Fighter Z is a 7 out of 10. And it loses a few points because I'm not sure how much life the game has in it. The arcade mode being one mode that's going to sort of mix the gameplay up because there's different ways that you can do arcade modes, obviously with like timed events or stamina carrying over between fights, kind of an endurance thing. But on the whole, the game is something that I'll probably play in short bursts. I can see myself jumping back in from time to time. Apart from the confusing menus and the lazy feeling maps, the game is the game that Dragon Ball Z fans have been waiting for. A straightforward fighter where the skill is in the timing and move chaining. If you're a fan of the series, or were when you were a child, go out and pick up Dragon Ball Z Fighter Z right now. Okay guys, that's my review for Dragon Ball Z Fighter Z. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave us a like if you enjoyed the video, and we will see you again sometime soon. Goodbye.